Hey everyone, welcome back to another series of tutorials on Spring Boot using Kotlin. In this particular video series, I will be talking about how to develop RESTful web applications using Spring Boot framework. Here I'll be using programming language Kotlin for development of the application. Before directly jumping on to hands-on sessions, let us see some theory about the server-side application development. Spring Boot is actually a Java-based framework which is widely used in the software development industry to develop server-side standalone applications. This is one of the top server-side app development framework in the market right now. Companies like Uber, LinkedIn, Google, Intuit, Yahoo, PayPal, Netflix, etc. uses Spring Boot framework in their server-side applications. This framework is built on top of another famous Java-based framework called Spring. The advantage of Spring Boot over Spring is it is easier to set up, configure, build, run, and deploy the application. Before going on to further details, we'll differentiate client-side and server-side applications. Most of the time, we refer to client-side application as front-end. There will be a user interface for these apps where user can actually interact with the UI and give input which is mandatory to process the request and give back the result. Core business logic will not be performed by the client application, whereas it will interact with the server, like it passes the user input to the server, also takes the processed result and gives it back to the user. When it comes to server-side application, we will focus on actual business logic implementation. There will not be a user interface as such, which means user can't directly interact with the server application. These apps will accept the request from client, which will be in a specific format, processes them, and gives the result back to the same. To perform the actions requested, these apps are authorized to interact with database or data warehouses as well. Next, we will see what is request response cycle in server-side application. Or in general, the major entities involved in this process are server and client. So, as I told, client takes the input from user. It builds a proper request which is in desired format and pushes it to the server. Server, what it does, it will get that request. It will check whether the request sent by the client is valid or not. If it is valid, it will do the necessary actions. It will construct a response and send it back to the client. Client, after taking the proper response, it will be client's responsibility to display the results on top of user interface, however client needs. Say for example, we have a database system where all the students who are enrolled for a course in a university is already stored. As an application, as a client-side application, what we have to do is we have to display all the names of the students. Okay, this is a simple task. So what we will do, we will construct a request to get the names of the users or names of the students who are having access to the course in that particular university. Then we will send that request here. So this particular web server, what it will do, it will fetch the list from the database where it is stored. So it will write the SQL query and execute the SQL query. So a query will be already written in the application. What it does, it will just execute those queries. It will get the response from the database. It will construct into a JSON format, say, and send that JSON data back to the user. If we are using a React-based client application, what we do, we get that JSON data, and then what we will do, we map every name onto a table, and we will display that to the user. That is simple. When it comes to HTTP request methods, these four are the major methods we use almost in all the applications. So these are the common methods we use. The get is for retrieving the data. Post is for putting something into the server. Put is for updating something in the server, and delete is for removal. So whenever we use this in our application, at that time I'll show how this works and how we will construct this kind of request. As part of the Tutorial requirement. So our basic requirement will be you should be familiar with Kotlin programming language. If you ask why Kotlin over Java, so as I said, Spring Boot is a Java-based application, but why I'm using Kotlin here is Kotlin is actually written on top of Java, and Kotlin has its own advantages. If you find it online, you'll get a lot of examples, lot of tutorials on how to develop a Spring Boot application using Java. But Kotlin, as it is an emerging programming language, and there are very less examples of how to define an application using Spring Boot and Kotlin, I'm choosing this. So as I told, Kotlin has its own advantages. So the programming can be written in a shorter way compared to Java. The code will be easier to read and understand. And as I told, since it is developed on top of Java, the Java compatibility is there. So whatever the code we write will be still compiled using JDK. So that is one advantage. And null references can be eliminated using programming language. Say, for example, if we have defined a function which should return a non-null value, in the code nowhere we can return nullable value. Say, my function returns an integer which is not null, so it should not be null while returning. So if I define a nullable integer, I cannot return that in the function. So the compilation error only throws. So most of the cases in Java, what happens? It will be handled using null pointer exception. But in this case, developer himself can restrict that. So there are multiple advantages of Kotlin as well other than these. So you can refer online and you'll get a lot of details on this. And the other requirement for tutorial series will be the IntelliJ IDEA or any comfortable IDE. Up to you. It's up to you. You can use NetBeans, you can use Eclipse, anything you can use. For the demonstration purpose, what I'll do is I'll use IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate as the IDE. So if you do not have the Ultimate license, what you can do is you can use the community version as well. IntelliJ IDEA has a community version. For database, I'll be demonstrating it using MySQL as of now, or if you have fair understanding on any of the RDBMS, that would work. So without further delay, let's jump on to the hands-on session and we'll start building the application. Catch you up in the next video. Thank you.